Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University. We are looking at the 4 blocks approach to teaching literacy. It is research-based, it is systematic, and it is probably one of the best ways for all students to learn how to read and write in a general ed or a special ed setting. It recognizes that all children can learn to read and write, but not all children learn in the same way. So it needs 4 different approaches. And with everything, adopt and adapt those parts that work for you. It is not a recipe to follow. Put together first by Cunningham Hall and Dufree, 1998. It was for non-grouping in a general ed multi-level instruction. However, Erickson and Copenhaver have adopted this specifically for use with children with disabilities, and I strongly recommend this approach. The 4 blocks approach incorporates 4 different approaches to reading or to literacy: guided reading, self-selected writing, and working with words. If students don't learn in one way, if that is not their strengths, well, there are 3 other ways. It works together like a system. 2 guiding principles, however. Each block must run 30 to 40 minutes every day. So every day you incorporate all 4 blocks, not 1 but 4. And instruction must be made multi-level. There's no such thing as a homogeneous group. All classrooms are multi-level because no 2 students are at the same place or at the same. It's designed for use in an inclusive general education setting, a resource classroom, or a special ed classroom. So the first part, guided reading, usually starts here. 4 blocks usually starts here. It is whole class reading either expositive or narrative text. The teacher chooses the material and the purpose to read and guides the class through it. It is a form of scaffolded reading experience here. We have pre, during, and post-reading strategies. The pre-reading strategy is designed to access prior knowledge, make personal connections, work with vocabulary, and get students ready for reading. The during reading activity, a variety of strategies. Now remember, the whole class is sharing this book, reading together. It could be silent reading, choral reading, echo reading, book clubs, group read, or ERT, everyone read to. So you break the text into small parts, everyone read to, stop, and you ask a question. That way, if students don't completely get through it or don't understand parts, they can catch up conceptually based on the conversation. It offers a teacher the chance for cognitive modeling, thinking through strategies. Boys and girls, when I read this, I visualized. Boys and girls, I predicted. All right? And you can work on vocabulary, teach concepts and comprehensions to the whole group. All right? It is structured and planned. You learn to stop at specific parts, to ask specific questions, or have specific activities. Everybody needs to have access to a text. With younger students, you might try choral reading or echo reading. And with older students, you can alternate teacher reads and silent reads, but the whole class is reading through it together. The second part is writing, like writing workshop. A structure created whereby all children are writing using their own writing topics. Choice is a powerful motivator. Writing is important in learning to read. Reading is important in learning to write because writing reinforces letter sounds and syntactic cueing. Is probably one of the best strategies to use here. Writer's Workshop means that students choose their own writing topics. They're all working at their own pace. They're all working at their own projects, which are at different stages. There are mini lessons, either whole class, small group, or individual. These last anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes on specific topics. And it focuses on 5 stages of writing: pre-writing, drafting, editing, revising, and or sharing. So there's pieces of writing going on at all different stages here. Other possible elements to include could be individual group writing conferences, mini lessons we already talked about. There could be editing tables where 2 or 3 students are editing the work of others, students reading and responding to others, illustrating, book publishing, website development where students put stories or writings, author's chair, and portfolio assessment. And I would encourage you to look at the latest speech-to-text software and text-to-speech software. Very good for helping children write as well as learning to read. Working with words is the third part. Here you would work on spelling, sight words, phonics, word identification, and maybe some fluency. When you're working on word identification skills, you're not working just on phonics, but on all of these. Close, analogy, morphemic analysis, word order, phonics, and sight words. You're using strategies to develop. You're not teaching, you're developing students' ability to identify words while they are reading. Word walls are often used here to reinforce letter patterns, phonograms, or sight words. Here's an example of a word wall, the at. And a very simple way to reinforce, boys and girls, I'm thinking of a word in the at family, you wipe your feet on it. All right, that's a quick little activity. Spelling. If you're doing spelling, I would recommend the self-selected approach where students choose the 8 to 15 words that they are going to study each week. You can still have mandatory words. Students that are very high level, you can have some mandatory words. Students that are low level, 2 or 3 mandatory words, maybe most frequent words. Pull these words that students study from their curriculum, from books they're reading, or from life during the week. Create activities that focus on letter patterns as well as writing activities. Okay. What about scope and sequence? You can use the scope and sequence found in the basal to give you a sense of what skills you might teach if you have to. Some administrators insist that you use the basal or the scope and sequence. However, students are the best scope and sequence chart ever. You know what skills to teach by looking at your students, by observing them read and write. And the fourth part of the 4 blocks reading is self-selected reading. Like reading workshops, students choose the books that they want to read. There should be lots and lots and lots of books at students' independent level or below. And you could include things like conferences, book talks, portfolio assessment, social interaction, reading logs. These are all parts of the 4 blocks literacy approach.